So this array right here that's being stored in the posts variable is this same variable right here, and we're doing the match. We're trying to find this key, one of these two keys, by supplying this variable right here. This variable is coming in through here, and we're getting this from our view file right here. So the second part of this URI segment is getting passed through to this controller and method, the method called show. This is set up to receive that, and then we're matching it. All this does right here, that's just our data store. So imagine if you had like a third post, you would just do comma, and then you would type cool. So this is just a data collection, and then we're doing a match to find a particular piece of key value of that data. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so moving on now. Let's go here, and I'm going to open up. Let's grab. Cool. Because we added that data, we're good. Okay, so I'm going to open up PHP myadmin, and my username is root. My password is secret. Don't tell anybody. And the database that I'm using is Laravel 6. There's all these other databases here, but this is the one that I am using for this particular project. Well, how do I know that that's what I'm using for this particular project, or I'm going to use for this particular project? Well, if we look in this file right here, this is what's called an environment file. Anytime you see a file name that has a period in front of its name and no other letters in front of that, this is a file that by default to Linux systems is hidden, and also on the Mac as well, because they have a Linux subsystem. So any file name that has a dot in front of it and a folder name, those are hidden from public view. You have to use a particular program that is able to see those. Like for instance, if I come up here and I come over to my terminal, I SSH into my Vagrant box. What? Oh, I'm on desktop. So you'll see that there's no .env file listed here, but I am in the root directory, and this .env file is inside of this root Laravel. But if I do ls -h, that's going to show me all of the hidden files. And so now we can see the .env file right there. Also, we have these files get attributes and get ignore. And on a, let's see, let's back up here. Let's see, it won't show it here, but on a folder that is being managed by Git, there'll also be a folder that's like, it's called like .git something. And so if you like totally mess up your repo on GitHub and you just want to start over, you can delete your repo on GitHub and then locally just delete the Git folder and then you can reinitialize that directory as a Git store. So like whatever changes you've made in the past, those all go away, and whatever file status your files are currently, that's what they will be when you reinitialize Git. But anyway, that's not what this video is about. So at any rate, that period is to hide files. And the reason we want to hide files is that inside this environment file, we have stuff like passwords. And so passwords we do not want available to the public. And so that's why when we look at something like this git ignore file, whenever we have a git ignore file, any file or folder that's a git ignore file, when you add and commit, those files are ignored. Git will not store those, nor will it push them up to GitHub, and it doesn't version track them. They're on their own. And so if something goes wrong and your folder gets hosed, there's no backup of these particular files. And so ideally you want to back up your environment file to another folder locally, but we never ever want to include this as part of our package that gets uploaded to GitHub. Okay. So our environment file can store a lot of different, I guess they're called constants. Anytime you see something like this that's in all caps, that is what's called a constant variable, and it never changes, and it can't change. If you try to change a constant in the code, the interpreter will fail. It will die out, and it will prevent that change from happening. So constants are great to use for things like passwords and stuff that we need to reference while our framework or while our Laravel application is running. And they are protected from being overwritten or changed. Once it's initialized, that constant will be that until the application stops and starts over again. So what we're going to be doing is right now we're setting up this connection using MySQL, and that is the database that we have running. But if you wanted to, you could change this to something else. You could change it to NoSQL. You could change it to MariaDB, whatever database you happen to be running on your server, you can change that. And then these are the most common attributes that help Laravel connect to that, whatever that database is. And so my database is called Laravel 6. So I'm going to add a little 6 there. My username definitely is root, and my password is secret. And I'm going to save that. Okay, so back over here, I'm going to select the Laravel 6 database, and I already have a post table, so I'm just going to drop that. So I'm going to show you guys how to recreate that post table. Okay, so we're going to create, and just a quick refresher, these are several different databases. A database can be thought of as a file cabinet, maybe a drawer within that file cabinet is what the tables are. So this is the file cabinet, and then when we add a table, that is the drawer inside of the file cabinet. And when we open that drawer up, all the records that are inside of there, all the folders, those are going to be the records that are inside of that table. A lot of people will get database and table mixed up. They'll interchange them. I do it too myself. I will call the table the database. It's not the end of the world. It's like fonts and typefaces. They're the same thing, but one is more accurate. And so it does matter, though, if you're trying to describe someone and you describe something and you say, I need to drop the database that's called something. And if you happen to have a database that's called that and you meant to drop the table, someone may drop the whole database, or you may drop the whole database. So you want to make sure when it counts that you're using the right nomenclature for that. Okay, so Laravel 6 we've got selected, and we're going to create a new table, and we're going to call this table posts, and we're going to create 3 columns in this. Okay, as soon as we do that, it wants to know what we want to name each column, what type of column is, and how long it is. So this first one's going to be the ID, and this is pretty standard. I found something watching that Jeffrey Way video on the Laracast's website. He created this using serial. Where is that? S-E-R-I-A-L.
Right. Oh,
Did I miss it?
yep, just above date.
Oh, yeah, right there. So if you choose serial, so we used to do tiny integer, and then we would set a length and all of the different checkboxes for all this stuff. And now if you just do serial, all that stuff is done automatically for you. This one is going to be slug. And we're going to use a variable character on this, and the length is going to be 255. And then this one's going to be the body of our post, and it's just going to be text. Text is you can fit however, I think it's like 65,000 characters is the limit in there. But you don't have to set a length value for it because it will just be that length no matter what. Just text has a default length built in. Okay, and then I'm going to click save. Sweet. Okay, so that's all set up. I'm going to insert a row into this real quick. Because my ID is automatically set and auto incremented, I never want to put a value in here, even though it's the first record. Back in the olden days, your very first record, you had to start off with like 0 or 1, and you do not have to do that anymore. It just does it automatically. And so I'm going to call this my first, oh no, sorry, that's wrong. My first post. Post. This data is in a table. Cool. That's it. I click go. And then if I browse that table, you can see here's my first record right there, ID 1. Cool. Okay, so that's good. I'm going to hop back over to this guy here, and we are going to go into our post controller, and we're going to make a slight change. We're actually going to get rid of this stuff right here. And we're going to make a manual connection to that database. And so we're still going to use post equals, because we want to send the value of that record if it matches up to the key. We're going to send it, but we're going to reference the database class. The table that we're looking for is called posts. We're going to say wherever in the posts table the column slug equals whatever we get from post up here, we're going to return the very first value and store it into this variable right here. Now, obviously, we can't do it like this because we have post, post, and post. That's going to throw things all crazy. So let's do this. We're going to change this to slug, and therefore this will need to change to slug. Cool. Now, it doesn't need to change. We can if we want to, but it doesn't need to change in our route because this is just going to pass through to the controller a value. And this is the thing that's going to catch that value. So we don't pass to the controller a reference to this. We actually pass whatever the value of that is to that method. And so because we're passing the actual value and not a reference, we can set this variable name up to be whatever we want. Think of like the baseball being thrown to the catcher. His mitt is catching that ball, and whether it's a softball or a baseball or basketball, doesn't matter. whatever emit we have will catch it. Cool. All right, and so we're going to need to make another change now because we are no longer directly referencing something in an array. We don't need this logic anymore. We're not doing a matching of the array down here. What we're going to do now is we can just change this, get rid of that array reference, and just say post. So we're still returning the view of the file, the post blade, which is this guy right here, and we're sending to that blade file an object that's called post and then storing inside of that the value of whatever's inside of this variable right here. Okay, now this is going to fail because there's one more thing we need to do. So I'm going to just make sure it fails first before moving forward. So we only have one post in there, so it has to be my first post. Okay, cool. If it worked, then we had done something wrong. So the fact that it's failing is good. What it's failing on is it's saying expects parameter 1 to be string object given. So what we're doing is over here in this code, like I said, we're passing an object to this blade file. And then what we're trying to do is we're trying to output that object. And we can't do that. You cannot export an object inside of PHP. Remember, this is just like saying PHP echo string post, right? So you cannot echo an object. It's the same as like trying to echo out or trying to display an array in JavaScript. It'll just say array. Well, it doesn't know what to do with it because it's a package. It's an object. So to see that, let's go back over here real quick. We want to see what's inside of this guy here. So just real fast, let's do a die and dump post, or dump and die. I always forget which one is which. So when I do a DD, that's going to kill the program and then spit out whatever object is passed to that die and dump. So I'll come back over here, reload this page. There's our package. Now inside of that object, now we can see what's being returned from this database is all of the columns, the ID, the slug, and the body. And all we need really is the body. So if we come over here to our post blade file and we go boink, boink, body, that should work. I don't sound very confident, do I? Oh, I need to take my die and dump off here. Oop, post controller. Okay. There it is. This is my first post. This is data in a data table. So what I've done is I have created a connection to my database, specifically to the table called posts, and I've looked up whatever this URI segment is here. So if I change this to second, it's going to fail because there's not going to be anything found in there. So let's do that real quick. Let's insert another column. My second post. This is my second post in this table. Oh, all right, browse. Now we have 2 rows there. And so if I come over here, enter, now it finds it. First post. Hey, this is my first post. Second post. This is my second post. Yay! It totally works. Okay, so one thing that might have caught you off guard, maybe not, is this right here. What I'm doing, remember in JavaScript, if I have an array, let's say we had our posts array, and I access a key value pair by supplying the key. And if I was to say something like echo on that, let's do boop, boop, PHP, boop. This would output, assuming that this was an array that we had set up somewhere and was available inside of this blade file. This would output not my first post, it would output the value that this key matched up to. And so the magic that's happening is within these square brackets, and then the key that we're providing within those square brackets. So when we did that die and dump, let's go back and let's re-enable that. This object is kind of like an array where you have these keys and the value that they match up to. And so all we're doing inside of this post blade file is we're saying, okay, this is an object, find me the key that's called body. And because it's not an array, I don't have to encapsulate it with anything like that because body itself is part of the object. And that's the best way I can describe it right now without cooking everyone's brain. But that's how this works. So if I wanted to access, let's say, the slug from this, I would just say, okay, give me the slug from whatever's inside of this post object. Go back over here, add my die and dump, my second post. There it is. And then you could even do something, you go a little bit further. We could say ID, body. And let's wrap this in paragraph tags. She should know about accessing stuff or getting a hold of me. So I'm including her in that, but not as far as what. Cool. There it is. Now it gives me the ID, the slug, and the actual body of that. Let me go first. Boop. There it is. Now ID's 1. My first post is now the slug, and then here's that. Okay. So that is the next step towards us accessing the database using a model. And that's going to be tomorrow, I think. But hopefully you can start to see the power of that, especially when we are not working with arrays anymore. And we have multiple tables we can access information from. So inside of this table, you can also have, we have the slug in the body. We could also add a column for, let's say, images. And then those images can be pulled up and included as part of our blade file. So we can actually access the URL for an image if that image is part of that. That's the power of that. This part is really cool. And so you can even do, if you wanted to, let's say we had, instead of show, we wanted to create. So you could have a public function down here called create. And then this would also make a connection to the database, but instead of pulling from where, we would be using logic that writes a record to that. And then you would be receiving information when you called that. So we could set up a form that was a blade file. And then when you submitted the blade file, it would point to an endpoint that was beep, No. What do we call it? Save? No, I think we called it something else. Let's call it save. Cool. And so you can save a record from that form. And then using this similar logic, we can write all of that information from the form directly to the database. And Laravel takes care of all the security stuff for us. Okay. So that's all I got for today. I'm going to go ahead and, is there any questions, first of all?
No.
No.
Okay. Was that pretty easy to understand, to follow along with?
Yes.
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 Okay, cool. So I didn't like lose anybody. That's good. I'm glad to hear that. Okay, cool. So I'm going to, let's go back to, where's our green cast at? When was that?
What?
Where's? I can't find where my thing is running. So I can't exit out of this meeting. Oh, is that it?
Stop
Yeah, there it
sharing
is. Okay.
our-
Yay. Found it. Okay, cool.
Yay.
All right. So thank you guys very much. I appreciate it. I was only 30 minutes. Yay.